In this week's episode of StudioInter, we'll be reviewing the emphatic win in the Derby d'Italia, together with Serie A commentator Marco Palmieri, reviewing the Fiorentina wins, focus on the Christian Eriksen's new role at Inter, previewing Udinese, this week's Moratti, Frog and Moggi, and much, much more. Everything here on StudioInter, only on SempreInter.com. Benvenuti, bentornati to a lovely new week here at StudioInter. I'm your host, Nima, Tavallaey, and although there's a pandemic going and I'm in Sweden, it's cold and dark, somehow I woke up today with a stupid shit-eating grin for reasons that we'll get into. But before we get into all of that, let me introduce my panelists, starting with Mr. Positivity, who I think that title doesn't just apply to him anymore. I think that applies to every single living Interista on Earth. But he was the first one, so we let him hang on to that one for a little bit while.
What's up, everyone? I'm so happy. I don't know if you can hear the song in the background. A full stadium singing C'è solo l'Inter.
Well, yes.
What a night.
Yeah, what a night. What a night. It was. Where did that performance come from? Right, and we're also joined by SempreInter's chief news editor, Mr. William Beckman.
Good evening, or good morning, good afternoon. Depends when and where you're listening to us. But yes, I'm in agreement. I've just been on the phone, incidentally, to a man called Jean-Luc Martinez. I don't know if you know him, Nima. He's the president of the Louvre in France, and I've been trying to get Alessandro Bastoni a space in one of their exhibitions for his assist against Juventus. He says, Mr. Martinez, he'll think about it and he'll get back to me. So
brilliant.
Watch this space.
Yes, watch this space. And we're also joined by Jake Smalley, who writes the What We Learned from Inter op-ed weekly on SempreInter. Welcome back, Jake.
Thank you very much. What a great week to come back on as well, especially after the last few weeks. Been a bit here and there after the end of the winning run, but I couldn't have picked a better time to come back on the podcast, really, could I? So no. I'm really excited to be chatting with you boys today about the win last night. I'm also full of a shit-eating grin today as well, so I'm in a good mood, so can't wait to get going.
That's great. And we also have a very special guest. He's been on the show quite a few times through the years. He's a Serie A commentator over in Italy for the English World feed. Welcome back, Mr. Marco Palmieri.
Hello, Nima. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
You're very welcome. And what a week you chose to accept our invitation. Everything. We're all smiling.
No, absolutely. I know. And I mean, you were talking about Mr. Positivity before. I mean, I don't really know how many of you were positive before this week. No. But I know there was a whole bunch of people in the Inter community that weren't expecting the result anyway, but they're very pleased nonetheless. So happy to be here to discuss it with you. Wow, it really did time it well.
For sure, because it is an absolute. I mean, we have to get into it. And it's let's start from the beginning. The game starts off, Juventus start off a little bit better. They look like they have when they're really under Pirlo, when they really are drumming.
Sorry to interrupt you, Nima. I think you're missing one important point that let's not forget: the fireworks before the actual whistle.
Yeah.
I think we've
and after,
and during. As
they went into the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. And after the goal was scored as well, I think that was something that needs to be highlighted, and hopefully we can see more of that from our Fedelissimi in the Curva Nord, who made their presence felt no matter what restrictions were in place.
Yeah, and I mean it was quite the spectacle, and I think there were so many fireworks. There was smoke in the San Siro, and they had to stop play. I think Bonucci got some of it in his eye. Even it was pretty intense. So, but he pulled through, and he was all right. So
yeah, a few eye drops, good as gold. You know how it is?
Exactly. Exactly. Clear eyes.
Yeah.
So, but speaking of clear eyes, Inter played as clearly as, that was the best Inter performance I have seen from any Inter team for the past, in the last decade. If we look, I've been looking throughout the day for games against Juve where Inter have been dominant. I've been watching these games since I was 9 years old. I'm struggling to remember a game after the millennium where Inter have mopped the floor with Juventus in the way they did yesterday. I want to start with you, Marco. Going into this game, none of us were positive. Not even Mr. Positive himself believed in a win. Nothing was speaking. Nothing spoke for Inter that this was how it's going to go. But the more the game went on,
I just want to clarify. I did predict to win.
Yeah, you predicted a win, but no one predicted Inter mopping the floor with Juventus. Let's be.
Oh, no. Yeah, sure. But just to set the record straight, okay. I was the one light.
In the shitstorm. Yes, you were. No, but Marco, seriously, going into that, the more the game went on, the more Inter looked dominant. Something we've not seen, not just under Antonio Conte, but pretty much since after Leonardo left Inter in 2011. I'm keen to hear your perspective on the game. What were your thoughts? What was going through your head when you were watching that?
The thing that impressed me the most was not the fact that they were good, because we've seen, I've got to say that even against the Roma match, the first 20 minutes of the second half last weekend impressed me a lot. But that was just the 20 minutes. The thing that impressed me about last night was how they managed to keep it up throughout the whole 90 minutes. They were absolutely dominant. And what we expected was a Juventus reaction that never came. And Inter was solid enough not to allow that to happen. So I think what happened finally was that Conte, who has now decided on a starting 11 for a couple of months now, I think, he's managed to really set that straight, that formation that know each other so well, and they know their movements and they play by heart, basically. And not since like Sarri's Napoli days have we seen a consistent starting 11 perform, to the ability that we expect him, because the quality is there. But the cohesion wasn't always there. Now that he's got that regular starting 11 going, we've seen interplay, in part during a game to their ability. But last night, not only did they manage to score the opening goal, and shall we say, just solidify.
We're going to talk about that because
because they've dominated in parts before, but they can never get that opening goal. That's the problem.
For sure. We're going to talk about the Arturo Vidal thing because that was insane for many reasons. It was such a typical thing as well, because I don't think he kissed Juventus badge on purpose. He was kissing his friend in a socially distanced, safe way by kissing his jersey. But the way that just before the game, it's clumsy by him. And I personally think that had he caused any drama in favor of Juve last night, that would have been it for him at Inter. Because some optics in Italy matter a lot, and those optics did not look good. I saw even Juve fans saying that maybe this was a bit excessive by Arturo Vidal. But what a performance he put in. He really turned back time, didn't he? He was rolling back the years. He won the most, I think he won 9 balls back, the most out of everyone. I did not expect him to play that well. What do you make of his performance, Marco? Do you think that this is the beginning of him redeem? Was that the real Arturo Vidal we saw? Or was it just a little? Was it fool's gold, so to speak?
Well, I think everyone expected him to go back to the days where, with his Juventus days with Conte. I've got to admit, I was one of those who selected him for my fantasy football team pretty early on, thinking that, he scored so many when he was with Conte. It's always nice to have a goal-scoring midfielder in your fantasy football team. But I was not repaid my faith, unfortunately, by Mr. Arturo. but he got off the mark midweek in the Copper match. Maybe that did the trick, but he's got a lot to catch up with as far as, getting back the love from the Inter fans, if there was any in the first place. I mean, the shambles of the Champions League is still fresh in the mind of everybody. His performance and his sending off in the match, I think it was against Borussia, is something that he will have to work very hard to try and redeem himself for that. And also, some of his performances obviously have been pretty subpar, but I guess he chose the right night to light up. And it's not just him. I got to say, the whole midfield. I mean, Brozovic and Barella were absolutely brilliant. Both of them were just unbelievable. Brozovic, let's start with him. I mean, he had a tough job on Ronaldo, and I guess he was pretty much responsible for, or one of the main guys responsible for making sure that Ronaldo never had the ball. And every time Inter picked up possession, he was always available. There was always a space for him to get the ball. And and when he plays well, it's a known fact that he is the key to the Inter team as far as if he plays well, the rest of the team play well. So he was instrumental. And then when you have someone like Barella in the form of his life at the moment, and my God, what a goal. It was so good to see, and to get that two goal advantage is something that I think it doesn't happen very often. I think that's what was needed against Roma. Like when you're playing that well and you're dominating and you can only score one, well, you can only get, a goal advantage, because I think they were trailing 1-0. And so they had to score two to get, the one goal advantage. And that's when the whole substitution for Conte, that thing kicked in, and everybody thought, why are you making substitutes when your team is playing so well? And they really needed a 2-goal advantage for him to be doing those kind of substitutions. And so when the two-goal advantage came last night, it was a relief for a lot of Inter fans that say, okay, well, now we're in a good position. Inter, no, they're not going to have to sit back, but they're definitely going to have to force Juventus to push forward, and they did, but they were unable to crack the defence. So anyway, I think I've gone on a bit there. Starting from Vidal, we've gone on to defensive performance, but you know what I mean. I mean, it wasn't just Vidal playing well in that area of the park. I think there was a lot of help from his teammates.
For sure. Mo, did you have a question for Marco?
Yeah, Marco, for people who don't believe or hadn't believed that Inter were actual Scudetto contenders prior to this performance, how much stock would you take in swing, like in changing the opinion? How important do you think this match really is beyond just the 90 minutes in really cementing or solidifying Inter's credentials as genuine Scudetto favorites, contenders, whatever? Or do you just think that it was it's a one-off, and whatever perceived problems existed prior to the match will continue to plague the side going on to the remaining run towards May?
Yeah, no, I think there's a couple of elements to take away from last night's performance. So it definitely helps as far as morale, motivation, and self-confidence for the Inter side, who, as I mentioned before, have shown that they can play at a certain level during a match. But if you just have a look at, and the second element, of course, is how last season finished. So really, last season, Inter finished 1 point behind Juventus, and a lot of people pointed to the two losses against Juventus that were the real factor in the fact in giving Juventus the title last season. Having beaten them so convincingly in this match, I know it is probably one of the worst Juventus performances of the year. Of the season, but it's something that Inter have to really capitalize on and really take away that the fact that they can mix it with the big wigs and especially a contender for the Scudetto. So I think, and keep maintaining that 7-point distance is something that they're going to have to, to try and do for as long as possible, because, Juve do have a match in hand, but and it sends a signal around, the rest of the league as well. Like Juventus managed to convincingly beat Milan, who at the moment are, the only team that really have had success against Inter, apart from a little slip up against Sampdoria. So, yeah, I think it's done a lot for Inter's self-belief in the fact that they actually are Scudetto contenders, even though they have been given that title by a lot of members of the press, especially here in Italy, for quite a while now, especially this season. But as far as the depth is concerned, it was always Juve who had the squad, the numbers, the depth, and in a season such as this, where COVID is wreaking havoc and so many players, are missing matches left, right, and centre. It's important to have good depth, and that's something that Juve have always been ahead of Inter in that department.
Will, did you have a question for Marco?
I did, yeah. Thank you for joining us, Marco. On this is the first time in 109 episodes of StudioInter that we've had a win over Juventus to talk about. So it's good that you're here to celebrate with us.
Wow,
yeah, I wasn't there 109 episodes ago, so this is good for me as well. But no, I was going to ask about the sort of the belief that this could give, but you've already discussed that. So I've just thought of another question that is kind of tacked onto the end of that. It sounds as if the January transfer window is going to be a bit of a damp squib for anyone who was hoping for signings, unless somebody comes in for Christian Eriksen or Pinamonti or someone else that Inter are persuaded to sell. So there's obviously a very good chance that this team is going to go on exactly as it is for the remainder of the season, apart from obviously having loaned out Nainggolan. So I was just wondering, after that match has that match maybe changed your opinion on whether this squad as it is good enough to win the league? Because I think a lot of people might have thought up until Sunday evening that this was maybe one or two players short of being ready to go the distance over 38 games. But do you think that they showed enough last night that actually Conte has everything he needs, and that the small gaps that are in the squad are not going to be significant enough, especially given that we're not in Europe, to derail a title bid?
Yeah, look, I have to agree with you there, Will. I mean, there's no money. I think that's been made pretty clear by everybody. I think that, the January transfer window has, at least January, has traditionally been pretty bad for Inter as far as results are concerned over the years. And there have been some rumors about the fact that it's, the January transfer window that actually, plays on the minds of a lot of players. It's there for a reason, not just, for a retouch of your squad, just in case there's injuries, or to be able to give, your team an opportunity to fix any bugs, so to speak. But it's also there as a motivational tool, so that players know that, there's always an exit for them if, they're not up to the scratch, and there's a way for them to get out of certain situations. So I think Inter have probably, used that in the worst possible way over the years, because it's meant that come January, I think there's just too much pressure on the players, and some of them haven't been performing to their ability. So I don't know. This time around, the players know that there's really not much that can come in, or at least they unless somebody is sold, they can't fix or replace whoever's leaving. I think the talk about other players, other strikers, maybe a backup like to Lukaku. So there was talk of Eder. I don't know who else could possibly come in, who, without taking massive pay cuts and stuff like that. I don't know. It doesn't really make any sense to me. I'm going to say, I've never been a big fan of the transfer market in per se. I mean, it's something here that people enjoy more than the football itself. I've got to say, sometimes I don't know if you guys are in that category, but it's something that I've always just this all the conjecture about it, all the rumors and all the the falsities basically get thrown around. I think for me, it's like, oh yeah, whatever. But I think maybe
usually when there's money, it's pretty interesting to follow the dynamics of it. But now that everyone's broke, honestly, maybe this is bad business for me to say this, given what I do for a living, but I couldn't care less this month. Like, it's just noise. All of it is noise because no one has any money. No one can afford anything, and unless somebody pays a shitload of money for Christian Eriksen, and even then Inter won't be able to invest that much either. Same with Pinamonti. It's just there's not much going on for anyone, and it's not just Inter. I mean, if you look at the deals Milan are making, they're not breaking the bank to do these loan. These are classic auxilio deals. The loan plus obligation plus option if and when something happens on the third day of the month after. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're so technical, these loans, and they're so cheap that no one's got any money. So I don't there's nothing's going on really.
Yeah, I agree. So I mean, there's no point in really even, I don't know, what does Conte have to do? I mean, he said last night something that I picked up in his interview was he knew already in August that was it. Like, there was no chance that that the club financially wasn't doing so well, or at least wasn't able to invest anymore. I mean, let's look. It's the salary total is huge at Inter, and it's something that is not viable anymore, especially now that there's empty stadiums and bigger costs for transport. There's all sorts of things going on with the pandemic, and football is obviously it doesn't escape the fact that financially they're going to take a hit. So yeah, he knew already in August, is my point. and so I guess the thing with Eriksen is tried so much to try and get him to play maybe out of position or a different role, or we saw in the Coppa Italia that even that opportunity thrown to him from the starting minute didn't really work out very well. So I think everybody else hasn't. Pinamonti has had a few minutes. I don't know if that. I don't. Yeah, he's got a good team. He should stick to it and make sure that it's working to his, to what he expects and how he wants it to work.
For sure. Jake, did you have a question for Marco?
I did, yeah. Evening, Marco. I just wanted to ask you about Lautaro Martinez. We know that there's potentially a bit more promise to come from him, but at the moment, I can't help but think he's a little bit under where he needs to be. This time last year, we were talking about Barcelona signing him for sort of a club record sale for Inter. Do you think there's more to come from him, or do you think he's someone who Inter are going to have to persevere with, or do you think ultimately if they can get a good offer for him, I know we're in a COVID market, but potentially in the future, is it worth cashing in on him? I just want to see what you think about Lautaro.
Well, yeah, I still rate him as a very high quality player. I couldn't have seen him leave for Barcelona no matter what the price, at the start of this year. Like, having played, not even a season when Icardi was around. He was pretty much the understudy to Icardi, got hardly any runs, but when he did come on, he showed what he was capable of. I think last season, we really got to know the true Lautaro in this, but without winning anything. I think he still has a lot to prove, and so this is it. This is his season, and so they've asked him to stay an extra year, or I'm pretty sure he's been happy to stay. And but I agree with you, Jake. I mean, the last few games, it's been almost painful to see how many incredible goal scoring opportunities he's missed. It's just not something that he can afford to do that many times. You can get away with one, maybe two a match, but that they're tallying up for Lautaro, and he needs to have that killer instinct that Antonio Conte has brought up a few times. He doesn't have it, and it's really, and it can be costly, as we saw against Sampdoria. So, he needs to step up, absolutely. And I don't know.
To me,
the same goes for Lautaro. As far as his price tag is concerned, what can they do if they do get a massive, price for him at the end of the season? Not now, but at the end of the season, then yeah, I think they should let him go.
To me, the difference between Lukaku, the difference between what you're saying, killer instinct. I mean, you can get away with one or two. Lukaku against Fiorentina had missed a sitter, but then he goes up and he scores the other one. That's the thing with Lautaro. It's right now he just can't score, no matter how many chances, clear-cut chances he gets, no matter how many good positions he gets in, he just can't score. And it's becoming. Strikers always talk about confidence. But this can't be a confidence issue, because he plays really well otherwise. To a certain extent, he participates pretty well in the build-up play. But when he gets into these situations, it's as if he chokes. In my opinion, I don't know if it's a quality issue. If he's not, he's got the Alexis Sanchez syndrome, which I think plagued his career a little bit, in the sense that he's a fantastic player, creates a lot, but just doesn't have that killer instinct, like you say, and the finishing is something he just doesn't have. Or if it's just a confidence issue, I honestly don't know. But I just know that you can't afford to miss 5-6 golden opportunities a game. And against Juventus, to be honest, Inter could have won 5-6-0 yesterday if Lautaro knew how to finish the ball, to finish chances, if we're perfectly honest.
I got to say, last night, the two strikers didn't score, but I have to say maybe Chiellini and Bonucci did still a pretty good job as, on those two. They were probably the best Juventus players. Yeah, it still doesn't take away the fact that Lautaro did have a couple of easy shots, or at least gettable shots. But
he doesn't even get them on target, Marco. You see, that's the thing. Yeah. If you get them on target and the goalkeeper saves them, fine. But he doesn't even get them on target. He consistently gets them off. He misses the entire goal. And yesterday, 3-4 times against Sampdoria, 3-4 times. It's not. That's why I'm saying, is this a quality issue? And it makes me want.
It's funny. It's funny with strikers. Sorry to interrupt you, Nima, but it is funny with strikers sometimes. They do tend to have different reactions to these drought spells. Some of them, can really eat every miss eats away at their confidence even further. Whereas there are other strikers that can use it as even more motivation to make sure that they actually do make a difference in the end, and they can get away with one or two, as Lukaku did the other day against Fiorentina. But in the end, you can't let that get to you, and it's a confidence thing. And Lautaro definitely knows that his quality. he's scored some amazing goals for Inter over the years, but at the moment I think, I don't know. There's a lot of talk about the fact that empty stadiums is having a difference, making a difference, at least to some of the way players approach a match. And I don't necessarily think that it's without merit. Most of the talk has been about how defenses are not as concentrated. I think they, for the whole 90 minutes, they prefer to have a crowd there on their backs and making sure that, it keeps them in their toes, type of thing. And I think that to a certain extent, Inter probably is one side, having been to many games in Milan. I know that the crowd can be pretty cruel towards players that aren't having a great day, and that can also contribute to players and their confidence. So, I think it's something for Conte to think about, but I don't think necessarily the fans are going to go and treat Lautaro any differently.
No,
I think
no.
And especially, I've got to say, I've read a lot of bad stuff being spoken about. Sami Handanovic, for example, another player who hasn't really had his best season, shall we say. But but I can't. I don't know. I'm not going to join the bandwagon there. I've got to say it's not something that I take any pleasure in doing, especially keepers. Keepers are just so easy to bag.
But don't you think with him that? Sorry, I
Yeah.
just got to ask you this. Don't you think that that the issue with Handanovic is being past his peak, that he's peaked and he's on decline? Because to me, comparing Handanovic this season and last season with the season before that and even before that, the drop off is so huge, and this season he's worse than he was last season.
I'm sorry, Nima. I have to disagree with you. I have to disagree with you. I'm sorry. I mean, yeah, sure. Keepers do tend to have extended careers. I don't think he's necessarily at his peak. Okay, but I still think he's a quality keeper, and I think last night, he showed that after 85 minutes, he can still come up with a save after doing absolutely nothing for the rest of the match, and that's what you need. I mean, I think he has lost a bit of his judgment, shall we say? Sometimes I think he refuses to go for certain shots that he expects to be out, and so famously just watches them with his eyes, thinking that
he's going to pray them out. I'm going to wish them out.
Absolutely. But I think he's been guilty of that a couple of times. So maybe just a lack of judgment in a certain, a couple of shots here and there. But I think he has done enough this season to earn Inter points in certain matches, definitely against Napoli, for example, and that was a match that Inter didn't necessarily deserve to win, but they kept a clean sheet.
But then again, he's costing for some howl. I mean, but that's what I mean. Like the howlers he makes, like that. These are things he didn't used to do. You see, that's my point about Handanovic, is that I think that he's still a good keeper, but I think he's on a declining trajectory, and that we've seen this consistently for 2 seasons now. I mean, one game here and there, every goalkeeper. I've seen Neuer make ridiculous mistakes. We've seen Alisson Becker, the best goalkeepers, Buffon, everyone makes mistakes, and howlers. That's just, and it just becomes so much clearer when they do. But with him, I think it's a consistent trajectory decline for over 18 months that I think it's similar to when Inter replaced Julio Cesar. Remember when they got rid of him a little bit unceremoniously and replaced him with Handanovic before he was past his peak? I think this is the next tough decision Inter have to do, that maybe he can take a Toldo role as Inter try to bring on someone whose career trajectory is going upwards, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there's no shortage of replacements in Italy, that's for sure. There's some excellent keepers all around. Yeah, Cragno, Silvestri. There's they're all good. But and you need, I think the policy, especially not just at Inter, but in most clubs around Italy at the moment, is to get young keepers or young players in general if you're going to make an investment.
For sure.
But at this stage, I still think, even the fact that he played in the cup match, I think it gave a sign to Handanovic that that the club still believes in him. It would have been easy to give it to Padelli or Radu. I don't know. I think they're the other 2 keepers.
Yeah.
But they decided to go with Handanovic, and I think it certainly helped him. And he had a great match last night. Let's see how he goes the rest of the season. But I don't think he's on the chopping board just yet. That's my opinion. There you go.
Yeah. No. I know. I want to know. We want to hear your opinion. That's why we invited you on. Yeah. No. I mean, I can't believe we've gone 34 minutes without really talking about how brilliant Nicolo Barella is. When I look at the way he plays and his development under Antonio Conte, and I look at the midfielders in all the top teams in Europe, I honestly think Nicolo Barella can walk into the starting lineup of every team in Europe, from Barcelona to Real Madrid to Bayern Munich to Man City. I think his breadth, his depth, and in the skill set is something that makes him very unique. And I think I honestly think he's good enough to start for any team in Europe, which is something we've not been able to say about an Inter player for a for 10 years almost, since the treble. What do you think is what impressed you the most about Barella against Juventus?
Yeah, well, his consistency. He just looked like he was having a great match, and I think there was no question about his ability throughout the season. I think he's shown time and time again. I don't know how many times he's been man of the match. He doesn't necessarily have to score. I mean, he scored some amazing goals last year as well. Last night's was brilliant, but I think what. We know what he's good about, what he's good at. But the thing that has really got under people's skin is his, I think his immaturity. I think his, he needs to work on that. And I think, Conte has to have a word to him as well about, avoiding yellow cards, because it was basically a given every match he'd get at least one and risk of sending off. It was something that, a lot of matches, Inter fans would just be, just on the edge of their seats going, what are you doing, Barella? Like you're looking for a second card. But so having said that, he knows that he's not only a leader, on the team, he's now also definitely a big part of Mancini's selection. Like there's no way that he's going to not go to the Euros. If he stays fit, he is such a quality player, and he's such a good team player as well. I think, it's not just the role that he has technically, but also, he gets along with everybody. And even you saw that with Cagliari, he was pretty sure he was wearing the captain's armband at some point for Cagliari. So, he's a leader, and he's shown that he can mix. It was his time to go to a big club, and he's made the most of it. And he's definitely his ability, his skills, his dribbling skills, and he's done what he's needed to do.
For sure. Thank you so much for coming on, Marco. Before we let you go, I want you to just quickly give me who do you think will your top six from position 6 to 1 in the Serie A and Capocannoniere. Come on, we make everyone do when it comes to.
Oh, really? Like, I think you got me to do this a few times. I know, over years, and I've got to. I think I may have gone a bit. I went for Sassuolo last year. I think everybody laughed at me, and I thought, as if Sassuolo are going to do anything. I was thinking getting the top six. And I was like, well, okay, maybe it was a year late, but I think this season they may just have a chance. I'm creeping into the top six. So who are my top six in that order, in the right order, or
from 1 to 6? Who do you think will win, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
Okay. Well, I'm gonna go Inter.
It's tough.
Napoli, Atalanta, Juve, Roma, Sassuolo.
So not Milan outside the top 6?
Did I not say Milan? No, I said Milan second.
No, you said Napoli. You said Inter.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah. Inter, Napoli, then Milan, then Juve. I'll remember. Yeah, so I have to settle on a 6, do I? Oh, jeez, it's tough, man. It's tough.
Yeah, this is what's so interesting about the Serie A. We're almost halfway through it, and it's still impossible to give a top 6, because it's usually you have like a 2-horse race breaking away at the top, and then you have something crystallizing itself. But this year you have 6 teams that essentially you can argue points wise are in the title race, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And it's
okay, I've got it. I'll give you my definitive 6. I've written it down. I'm going to say Inter, Napoli, Milan, Juve, Atalanta, Lazio. There you go.
So no Sassuolo then. They're 7th.
No, I'm sorry. Can't back it up this season. Although I would have loved to include them. That would have been a great surprise. But I just can't see Juventus out of the top 4. And Atalanta had a great run last season, but maybe they can win Champions League this season.
Nice one. So I don't know if you're on social media or anything, but if you have anything you want to plug, and if you want people to follow you or something, just the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. No, look, my Twitter handle is always getting a lot of communication. So if you guys want to keep sending me messages on Twitter, I'm always happy to respond. Marco27 is my Twitter handle. So
thank you so much for coming on, Marco.
No worries, Nima.
Take
Always
care.
a pleasure.
Take care. Ciao. Buona serata.
Take it easy. Ciao.
Ciao. Right. Let's move on to let's talk about the Juve game. And I mean, for me, it was about the three Bs: Bastoni, Brozovic, Barella. And one thing, that pass from Bastoni to Barella, this is something we've seen Inter do a couple of times since Antonio Conte took over, but only really successfully this season. With the first thing that comes to mind is Alexander Kolarov doing that against Benevento away to Hakimi, who eventually assisted Lukaku, and then Bastoni doing these cross balls from the left centre back, diagonal 50-60 meters to a running to a player, to an Inter player from the right hand side that's running towards the ball. That's something we've not seen. That's something we've seen under Antonio Conte quite a few times. But aside from that, Bastoni's 21 years old and he plays like a complete defender. The growth that he's had under Antonio Conte, it's unbelievable, and it's so interesting to see. I think even Milan fans would be hard to press, or anyone would be hard to argue that Italy's two best central defenders are Acerbi and Bastoni right now. What do you think, Mo?
What do I think about Bastoni in particular, or about? Look, I think Bastoni is a clear. Like you say, he's I was talking yesterday. Like Italy are going to be so good with Barella and Bastoni, right down the middle, and for me it's difficult to see across Europe. Granted, I don't watch much outside of the Serie A and maybe a bit of the Premiership, but I don't know of, or in my memory, I haven't seen a player that young playing in such a critical position. That's normally, you understand that a central defender peaks at about 27, 28 later in their careers. And the type of defender he is, he's a De Vrij-esque defender rather than a Vidic-esque defender. He's a thinking man's defender. He's amazing with the ball at his feet, and so composed. Like you spoke about the three Bs. I think for me yesterday, what was very impressive was, and I think the commentator on the match had pointed it out as well, was the availability that everyone. Marco said about Brozovic being constantly available, but I think everyone was available for everyone. There was always an easy pass to be made at any point in time, and even when under pressure, players like Bastoni, players like De Vrij were able to do a little shimmy or whatever to get themselves out of trouble and find that pass. So I think, I mean, we can talk on and on about Bastoni, but I think the key yesterday, and we spoke about it last week, was the mentality. Mentality was what was going to win into the match, and there were doubters, myself included, that the mentality was not there. But we saw yesterday, if the players come into the match prepared mentally correctly, then there's no one in the Serie A who can stand in front of them.
No, for sure, Brozo. But this is something I wanted to ask you. I want to ask each and every one of you what you think about this. Starting with you, Will. For me, yes, Inter were fantastic. Antonio Conte was a fantastic performance. He got everything spot on. Inter gave the best consistent 90 minutes that we've seen in almost a decade. All of that is true. But I can't help but to think that this was also in part due to Andrea Pirlo not being up to par and able to get the best out of this Juve team to go against Antonio Conte's Inter, who everyone knew how they were going to play. I mean, Conte plays his way, like you call it, a marching band. And I, as much as I want to think that this, because Inter did play for the first time in Antonio Conte's tenure, like a Scudetto winning team. No doubt about it. Like a team that can consistently, that is good enough to challenge for the Scudetto. There's no doubt about that. But I can't help but to shake that feeling. I can't shake off that feeling that large part is also down to Andrea Pirlo making Inter look good in the sense that they made life really easy. And there was no pressure on Brozovic. He could dictate that game without any problems, and that he dictated the tempo without any issues because there was no pressure on him, and that helped set the groundwork for Inter's complete dominance. What do you think, Will? Do you agree with that, or where are you on this?
Well, I think often in these situations it's a case of six of one and half a dozen of the other. I mean, whenever there's a sort of a clear dominant win in a match that you were expecting to be close, you always have that debate about how much of it was the talent and the brilliance of the team that won, and how much of it was the incompetence of the other team. And then you have those that say that it was the brilliance of the other team that made the other team play badly. So I suppose we'll find out in the next few weeks when we play teams that aren't managed by Andrea Pirlo, such as Lazio and Milan, who are coming up in the league in around about a month's time. I don't think that by any means we should be just saying what Arrigo Sacchi said today, which was, Inter were great, but they played against nobody. There's definitely merit in what happened last night, not least because, there was really never a sense that Juventus were going to get back into the game. And with the talent they had, and with this history that they had, this sort of muscle memory that they have of producing moments of brilliance when they need them, I think it's still valuable and worthy of a lot of praise. But seeing as we've already given out that praise, yes, it is true. Juventus were crap. Let's be honest. That's probably their worst. I mean, Marco said it was their worst performance this season. It's probably their worst performance in the league for about 10 years. Because they've never been swatted aside like this, as far as I can recall, in the league, in the way that they were yesterday. Pirlo. I mean, you're preaching to the converted with Pirlo. We've heard a lot about his coaching thesis and Pirlo-landia and the fluid style of play, and how he's sort of this fantastic, born to be a coach, everything, and etc. and so on. But I've not seen much of it so far. I think that Juventus have big problems breaking teams down, and their pressing game is not always very fluid. I think earlier in the year there were some reports that the players weren't really sure what he wanted them to do when they were pressing high up the pitch. I think we saw that yesterday. In transition, they're not good. You saw the way they were positioned for Barella's second goal. And so, yeah, I mean, I thought the one thing that I didn't say last week but I was thinking about was that obviously we had this problem in big games of taking the lead and then throwing the lead away. And I kind of thought that if we got the first goal in this match, we had a very good chance of winning it, because Juventus are very dangerous in sort of transitional positions, when they can send Chiesa behind the defence, when they can get Ronaldo up against an opposition centre back in a bit of space. But if you take the lead against them, in theory that space should never exist, and that's pretty much what happened yesterday. We got the goal, and then obviously Marco mentioned that save that Handanovic made, but that was pretty much it. They really never looked like scoring after that. There's clearly a two-way discussion to be had, and I do agree that Pirlo did not exactly pass the exam that he sat last night. But I think we need to give this victory the performance that we need to give this performance the merit that it deserves, because it was different, and we all knew that Andrea Pirlo was a novice coach 7 days ago when we said that the mentality was going to cost us the match, and it didn't happen. So I still think that there's ways that we did learn things about Inter last night. I feel like this is the kind of match that should give this team the confidence in its own ability that I don't think it had up until this point. And Conte got everything right. You still have to take advantage of Juventus, who remain, the team that have won for the last nine seasons, even if they're not exactly at their best ebb at the moment. But yeah, I mean, we don't know the answer. We'll find out in the coming weeks. We've got the derby. We've got two derbies, in fact, in the Cup and in the league, Lazio. But let's be happy because we haven't beaten Juventus for 109 episodes, as I said earlier.
Yes,
so not going
Frank de Boer. No more Frank de Boer jokes. Thank
One
God.
more thing, by the way. I did say last week that Hakimi versus Frabotta would be fun.
It was fun.
It was fun.
Barella, Hakimi versus Frabotta and Chiellini.
That tandem.
and Hakimi versus Chiellini and Frabotta was hilarious to watch.
That Hakimi-Barella tandem in the first half was destructive. It was fantastic.
Unplayable.
They could not do anything, and it just took me back to only a couple of years ago when that was D'Ambrosio Candreva on that wing. We couldn't have done that 2 years ago.
No, we could
even
not.
Against Andrea Pirlo's Juve. So,
indeed, we could not. Jake, what are your thoughts on that? On the whole Pirlo Juve thing that I just asked Will, because I want to hear your thoughts and Mo's thoughts on this as well.
I think if you're going to break it down to just the game, I think you've got to focus on that word mentality again, haven't you? I think in any sort of big game, no matter who it is, it's all about key moments, and mentality leads up to that. And I think Inter getting that first goal was really important. Like what Will just said, I think it's really key. If you score against Juventus first, you can hold the game in your hands a little bit. That's when they're at their least dangerous. And Inter just, you could tell they knew that. They were pushing up at the right time. They were closing down the space and stopping Juventus from getting in behind. And as soon as Inter went in front, it was almost as if the game could have ended. I'm a little bit disappointed it was only 2-0 as well. I think Inter merited more goals. It should have been 3 or 4. It would have been fully deserved and fully reflective of just how much better they were than Juventus. And Juventus are the ultimate mentality monsters of the last 9 years, and it did shock me a little bit watching the game, seeing how easily they rolled over. And you can possibly point the finger at Pirlo for that in a way, but we've said it before. He's very much a novice coach. He's trying to find out who he is. For me, he was quite a surprise appointment. I'm still not decided on what kind of appointment he is. Is he someone who's there to manage this sort of transitional phase and be the fall guy and take the fall for it? Or is he someone that they really do think will be managing them for the next 10 years? I don't really know, but I just think as far as Juventus are concerned, they're coming to an end of a cycle now. I think they've been, an absolutely unbelievable team, the last 9 years in Serie A, but it's coming to an end. Looking at some of the players last night, I was thinking, how many of those players would I actually take in the Inter team? And I couldn't really think of any. I think as far as penalties are concerned, maybe I'd put Ronaldo in there. Chiesa possibly someone who you'd consider taking, but I was really struggling to find more. And I know they were missing Dybala. I know Cuadrado wasn't playing. I know De Ligt as well, but I was disappointed by that. But I just think it's coming to an end. And I think it's really exciting from, sort of a neutral point of view as well, that Serie A is going to get a little bit more exciting. I think you've got teams not just Inter that are waiting to sort of overtake Juventus, and I think you could see them potentially, if they don't sort of click in gear with this manager, whether he finds a system that he likes or he starts playing the right players. I mean, Kulusevski on the bench, I don't really understand. But it could be a case that a few teams start to overtake them, and we have a really exciting league. I mean, the league does look really excited this year. Like you've just been talking to Marco Nima about, there's 5 teams that are, technically still in the title race. But, I think last night was almost a little bit of a passing of the guard for me. Whether Inter can go on and be, Scudetto winners this season, I'm not sure. But it was almost a bit of a symbolic performance for me that Juventus are not the team they have been over the past few years. They've not got it in them now. And perhaps it's time for them to step aside, rebuild a little bit, and sort of come back maybe a little bit stronger. Whether Pirlo's the right manager for that, I don't really know, because I don't really know what he's about yet, if I'm going to be honest. And I don't think the players do.
I'd take Szczesny if we're taking Juventus players.
No,
I know Marco won't like that. But.
No, I'd take De Ligt just to have him, because I think De Ligt, De Vrij, Skriniar, Bastoni is probably the, I don't know if
we've never conceded a goal in all.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even need a goalkeeper. You don't need someone in goal if you've got those goalie. Yeah, just De Ligt. That's one of those battles that I was hoping I'd see. De Ligt against Lukaku. Because I don't know what they've been feeding De Ligt. I don't know if you've all noticed, but he's twice the size he was. He was already a big guy, but now he's twice the size he is, and he's strong. And him and Lukaku butting heads would, I don't know, knock the earth out of orbit or something.
Well, we may well get this yet, because let's remember that this is the 18th round of the season. That means that Juventus Inter is the penultimate weekend of the season.
Well, we know what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen
you know what's
there.
Happen.
Let's be honest. I mean, Milan. This is why I think Milan are going to win the Scudetto, because there's, if Juve come into a situation where the choices between losing against Milan and helping Inter win the Scudetto, you don't need to be a conspiracy theorist to understand what's going to happen there. They will choose Milan 9 times on, 9 times in the week and 3 times on Sunday. So
with Andrea Pirlo in charge.
Come on.
So
do we really need to even discuss this? Yeah. So no, it is what it is. But Mo, I want to hear you on that, because on just that final point about how much is Inter, how much was Conte, how much was Pirlo, and the rest of it.
Look, I think you know me. I think the team was pretty good coming into the game. I think the team was already great. So I think Conte had already done the hard work. The impressive thing about this match was the fact that the players mentally were able to sustain the level of performance, whether the starting 11 or the players that had come on for them, Darmian, Gagliardini, even Sanchez, were able to sustain the same level of concentration and physical output for the 90 minutes without that drop that we expect, either towards the end of the first half or towards the end of the second half, whenever that drop comes. So I think that was the impressive thing. Now, whether that was due to the fact that, like you said, Juve going down a goal makes them so much easier to be had at, and that changing the dynamic of the... I mean, let's remember, there was a disallowed goal, absolutely correctly disallowed for Chiesa offside right before the Vidal goal. So Lord knows how things would have turned out had Juventus scored first. Maybe this is a long-winded way of saying, like alluding to my question to Marco earlier. I was convinced that Inter are a Scudetto contender, if a Scudetto favorite, to going into this match. I don't think winning this game in this manner should change much. However, I think had we lost the game, it would have been a pretty bad look on Inter and on Conte. So I think positively, the thing to take away from the game is the fact that we were able to mentally play our game, our football for a full 90 minutes, which is definitely something that we've not seen. And everyone's waxing lyrical on how good Inter looked yesterday, but I think Inter played better against Barca in the first half last year in the Champions League, played better against Dortmund in the first half, played better against Milan in the derby last season as well, in that comeback. So they have played well. The impressive thing was how well they played for the entire duration of the match. I also, know that there are certain players who thank God weren't fit on Juve, and I'm looking at Cuadrado mostly. So it's not like it was a full strength Juve. The result gives me a lot of joy, but if this is the match that you're looking at to convince you that Inter are genuine title contenders, that's not it. I think maybe the performance is something that we can build on mentally. The performance is something that we can build on, in terms of like continuity in starting 11, clarity in vision, etc., etc. But I think the manner in which the game played out, especially in the second half, was probably mostly due to a failure on Pirlo's end. And then coupled with the correct mental preparation going into the game, rather than anything else. I just wanted to also ask you guys if you noticed as the players were getting onto the pitch, the camera zoomed in on Cristiano a few times, and he looked really nervous. And he was taking really deep breaths, and he was breathing hard, and he looked quite shook. Did anyone notice that? Because I remember seeing it as they were walking off, and I was wondering, is this something that he normally does that I don't notice, hype himself up, but he really did seem like he was off as they were walking into the pitch for the Serie A anthem.
I didn't think of that. I didn't notice anything. Did you guys do that, Will? Jake?
No, it is true that he's failed in 2 performances in a row at San Siro now, but I don't think it's because of nerves. He always does that heavy breathing before he takes free kicks, doesn't he? I don't think it's a
an anxiety thing. But he did look he did look visit. I'll try and find the GIF and share it with you guys later. But for me it looked like I always always go back to fighting, but sometimes a fighter goes into the ring or the octagon or whatever, and they don't look. Something looks off, and Cristiano looked a bit off walking into the. I mean, he looked fine. His body language was fine, insofar as he was clearly frustrated and disappointed, but not nervous. But that walk onto the pitch was a bit weird.
Yeah. For sure. Right. One thing we haven't spoken about is the only thing worth speaking about from the Fiorentina game is Christian Eriksen as a regista. After 13 months of saying that he can't play there, Antonio Conte dropped the bomb and said, he actually can play there. And I've been working with him to get him to play there. And I think I expect him to do great things. I have to say that I really liked the experiment. I thought it looked pretty interesting. And I thought we have the embryo of something there that could become something bigger, something really interesting, which is a game changer if they can continue to do that. And especially now playing against Udinese and then Benevento, or I don't see why you couldn't play Christian Eriksen in that role. What do you guys think, Will?
I mean, one reason that you might not be able to play Christian Eriksen there is if you were to leave before then, because Inter confirmed on Sunday that they are still looking to offload him. Not that looks imminent at the moment, but if he's staying, I don't expect it to happen because Conte clearly, I think, is doing this more out of necessity than any kind of benevolence or faith in Eriksen that it's going to work. I think he knows that. The opportunity of him being sold is quite small at the moment, and there's no money to buy anyone. So, given that he's often made comments about the lack of reliability he can have off the subs bench and the lack of a sort of an important contribution they can give, he knows that he can't really afford to waste anyone in that squad. Having said that, Brozovic is booking away from suspension, so he might need him at some point. It's probably something we'll have to see, unless he wants to play Sensi there, assuming that he gets fit. I didn't think it was that remarkable on Wednesday. I mean, obviously it was surprising that he did it because no one was expecting it when he confirmed it the night before. That was surprising because we'd all sort of assumed that he'd given up on Eriksen. So it was encouraging that he was trying. In terms of what we saw, I mean, I suppose the word embryo is the right way to put it, because he was fine. I mean, it was okay. The match kind of felt like a testimonial to me. It was weird playing a cup match in like the afternoon on a weekday. And he lost the ball a couple of times, but generally he was quite tidy. He looked a little bit rusty, perhaps because he hadn't played much. So it didn't sort of catch my eye as something that must be pursued at all costs. But the fact of the matter is we don't have that many options in midfield, and as Conte said himself, we don't have a backup to Brozovic really, unless you want to play centre there, which he's never really done. So yeah, it's worth a try. It doesn't make me very enthusiastic, so I'm sure you can tell from the way I'm going about this, but I'd love to see Eriksen play more. So if he's not going to play him as a mezzala, then you might as well try him as a regista. But I think he took off the opportunity of the cup match to do it, but I don't necessarily expect it against Udinese or Benevento, because we're playing once a week now, so it's not really as if Brozovic has to rest. I think it would just be something that, in terms of if he was out of suspension, then if he was out through suspension, then maybe it's something we might see again. But 6 out of 10, fine, yeah, whatever. That's my overwhelming thought.
What about you, Mo? What did you make of it?
Yeah, pretty much the same. Look, we've spoken about Eriksen ad nauseum here. I think the player needs to take some responsibility as well, So if you're finally given a chance to start an important match, a decisive match, 90 minutes, I mean, you don't need to go swinging, for the bleachers or whatever metaphor you're going to use, but at least show something more. And it didn't suck. You're right, of course. But and maybe Brozovic's performance against Juventus was, upped by a couple of notches, knowing that there might be competition for his position. We know that Brozovic is a very temperamental player, so maybe there is that, that added bonus as well. Now Brozovic needs to be on his toes every week in, week out, giving his best and not, throwing his arms up in the air and moaning when he loses the ball or whatever. But I honestly, I expected more from Eriksen. I really did. I expected just a bit more urgency, a bit more. There's no need to find a killer pass every time, but just, do something a little bit more eye-catching. This is like an audition, and if you really want it, then you need to go out and get it. And he didn't show us that. And again, it didn't suck. And maybe it is a learning process, and maybe a year from now we'll be talking how that Fiorentina game was transformational in Eriksen's career. And honestly, when you look at the qualities that Eriksen offers as a player, there's absolutely no reason why he shouldn't be able to fulfill that role as well as, if not better than, Brozovic. But for whatever reason, he's unable to, or unable to in the same way that fulfills the potential that we all know exists within him somehow. But yeah, I'll say it was a pass, but a very lukewarm pass. I'd see it again. Why not give it another go sometime?
Jake, what are your thoughts on this? Because I actually quite disagree. I thought he was really good. I thought it was a 6.5 out of 10 performance. I was really impressed. I like what I saw, especially the fact that I like what I saw, the fact that he came back into the game. Good first half, difficult second half. And then when Brozovic and Barella came on, he again turned it on and started dictating tempo. And that's a midfield I want to see more of. Brozovic, Barella and Eriksen. What do you think?
I'd love to try and squeeze Eriksen in somewhere, but I just can't help but sort of get past this idea that it's just not meant to be. I just think if you look at the last 12 months of his career, even at Spurs before he came to Inter, he's been on a little bit of a decline. I don't necessarily think that that's permanent. He could find a home somewhere else and it work out. I just don't know if it's an Inter colours. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm being a bit superstitious, but I just feel a little bit like sometimes it's not meant to be with players. I see him out there on the pitch whenever he does play and he looks a little bit lost. He doesn't really know what his job is. He doesn't really know sort of where to be or anything like that. I mean, against Fiorentina, I didn't think it was too bad. I thought, as far as Eriksen was concerned, it's probably one of his better performances. And I quite like the idea of having someone as a bit of a vice Brozovic. And maybe the fact that Conte was so outward in giving him a chance in that role, it brought a better performance out from Brozovic last night. That could be a factor. But I definitely see him play that role again. But I'm not holding my breath. I just think the long-term implications of this, that he ultimately just needs to be sold and just move on. I agree with Mo. I think he's got to take a bit of responsibility as well. I don't think he's necessarily thrown himself in as hard as what he could have. Maybe that's to do with the fact that he sort of sleptwalked through his last few months at Spurs. He has moved to a different country. He did live at the training ground for a really short spell, if I'm not right in saying, when he was, during the first sort of lockdown period. And it's not been an easy transition for him. But looking at the weighing scales, there's just so many negatives, to Eriksen and Inter shirt at the moment. And I don't like to say that because I rate Eriksen. I've seen him play for Spurs for, best part of the last 6 years or so, and he's always been absolutely excellent. But I just don't think it's going to work. I want to be wrong, and that's why I say that I'd love to see him have another go there. I'd love to see him fulfill his potential, because I know what a great player he can be. So I wasn't disappointed if you take that game as just isolation on its own. And we'll have to see. Having someone else in that role that you can possibly trust can't be a bad thing. I mean, and especially when you take into account Sensi's injury record as well, it looks like that we might have a bit more of a recurrence of that too. So, we'll have to see.
For sure. Right. Well, now this Saturday, Inter play Udinese in a game that, Well, I mean, the win against Juve will be completely pointless and useless if Inter don't win that game against Udinese to keep pressure on a Milan who just keeps on winning, and a certain Zlatan Ibrahimovic keeps on scoring. First game back properly from start, and he continues to score. They're 2-0 up. They're probably going to win that game. And they play Atalanta. And one thing that's interesting about them playing Atalanta is that they will do so without Alexis Salamakers, who was sent off tonight, Theo Hernandez, Hakan Çalhanoğlu, Simon Kjær, Ante Rebic, Ismail Benacer, and Alessio Romagnoli. And if I've forgotten someone else, you'll have to forgive me. But if Milan beat Atalanta without those players, with Mario Mandzukic in 2021, I think the universe is simply trying to tell us that Milan are going to win the Serie A, and we should all just get on with our lives and accept it, because it's getting. I mean, they keep winning games without having important players, and they don't exactly have a squad that's as deep as Inter's. But Inter have to do theirs against Udinese, otherwise the whole thing is moot point. And it's a game that's historically rather difficult. It's a difficult place for Inter to go to. And they will go up against a player that Antonio Conte wants, Rodrigo de Paul. I don't know what to think anymore, because after the performance we saw against Juventus, I'm kind of expecting a reaction to that. But I also expect Inter to go out there and with brimming with confidence and take control of that game. I'm going to start with you, Mo. What does your mystic eyes tell you?
3 points, win for sure. Easy money. I think.
Okay.
I think we've got just under a week to prepare. I think we spoke about that mistakenly last week when I forgot about the Fiorentina Coppa game. But I think with 6 days to prepare, fresh legs, light hearts, levity and Appiano. Famous last words maybe, but I reckon it's a pretty straightforward win. And I'm very disappointed in Cagliari today, but that's a different. Like you say, Milan just keep winning. But if we manage to drop points against Udinese and Milan do beat Atalanta with all those missing players, I promise I'll stop talking about this Scudetto.
No, but seriously, I mean, it's getting ridiculous now.
It is. They're like, you remember the movie? I don't know if I made that analogy earlier, but the movie The Party, Peter Sellers, when
yes,
that cameo in the beginning scene, and they just kept shooting him. He just kept blowing the trumpet or the horn or whatever. Yeah, they won't go. But I think honestly speaking, I think it's a straightforward win. I promised you guys I wouldn't predict clean sheets anymore, so I reckon we'll concede a cheeky goal, but it'll be a straightforward 2-1, 3-1 win.
You see, I'm with you as well. I want to see consistency. They don't have to pull out a Juventus performance, and obviously they won't be able to, because Udinese will park the bus as teams do, because the winning against Inter isn't their priority. But I do think a 2-0 win. I think Lukaku will get back on the score sheet. I think he'll score a brace. Quickly, Will, what do you think?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened last year. 2-0, 2 goals from Lukaku. I think the same. And I would just say to Mo, you shouldn't expect any favours ever from Eusebio Di Francesco, or indeed the rubbish mess of a Cagliari team he is coaching. So I'm with you on Atalanta next week. I expected nothing from that match, but maybe next week we can have a favour. It would be very Inter to drop points at the same time as a draw maybe in that game. But I agree. I think we should win this game. If we're getting into the phase of the season now where we've got a game every week. Conte has a free week to prepare the matches. He's supposedly the best at this. History suggests he is, and I don't think there will be a lapse in concentration in Udine. Incidentally, Udinese may have a different manager by the time we get there. But that's one thing that could throw a spanner in the works, because they play Atalanta on Wednesday. And then after that, they got Inter, and their coach is not entirely certain to be continuing for any longer because they're on a rubbish run. So there is the possibility of a new coach bounce, which could cause problems. But I think even if that happens, we should be too good for Udinese.
Jake?
I'm sort of getting, I don't know if you've seen it as a meme going around at the minute, sort of this sort of flashback to Vietnam kind of situation with these helicopters. That's what I sort of think at the minute. It's a bit of like I've seen this before, a really good positive result, and then a really tricky banana skin dirty game that they've got next, travelling away as well. I don't know, it frightens me. I want to say a 2-0 solid win as well. I think if they can pick up from where they left off, obviously last night, that's the key. If they can carry that momentum in, and like Will's just said as well with Conte, having that time to prepare will sort of help him out. I think Gotti will still be in the job. I think by the weekend potentially, I think they might just give him as a little bit of a last sort of swan song. But if they can just keep the same intensity up, I think that's the big key. Start the game strongly, get that first goal. It should be pretty routine. But I really hope Milan can't beat Atalanta. It just defy even more logic. I thought after the Juventus result they'd start to fall apart a little bit, but they just don't. Nothing about it makes any sense.
The universe has decided.
I just don't get it. I can't understand it.
I'll tell you what it is. When Zlatan Ibrahimovic left Inter in the summer of 2009 for Barcelona to win the Champions League and Inter go on and win the treble, he was made to look like galactically like an idiot. This is payback 11 years later by making Inter look like intergalactic mugs, by him leading this Milan of kids to a Scudetto that no one expected them to do. Like this is what that is. I've seen this movie before. This is what he does. He wins leagues. He scores these. He drags these teams over the finish line against Cagliari, against Udine, against Siena, or whoever it is, and he delivers, and then they win the league. And this is that Inter just can't slip up, and you can't slip up when you've got him, because even when they don't play well, he is the difference between winning and drawing. And I've seen this for 20 years now, this movie. So this is they're going to win it. I'm just coming to, from now until May is a long stretch of acceptance basically for everyone to come to terms with the fact that Ibra is going to give payback to Inter for that by burning in their noses like this.
Do you think it's a 2-horse race now, Nima, given that Milan?
No, I mean, if we're going to be honest, I mean, there's more than half of the games left to play. I think it's a 4-horse race between Juve, Napoli, Inter, and Milan. Okay. Seriously speaking, I think that those 4 teams are the ones that are going to fight for the title. Juve are still in it. I think people are wrong to discount them. They have a game in hand, and if there was any other team, I'd say they're out of it. But Juve can turn it around when they have before, and they have the quality to do it again. Napoli, if they can get the consistency going, they absolutely can. They have they have an attack and a very they have a way of playing that is very interesting and will hurt teams in this league. As for Milan and Inter, everyone keeps telling me, as if to convince themselves, that Milan are overperforming, but you don't overperform for 14 months. You do it for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks or even 2 months. This has been 13 months now. It's not, they are this good. Just accept it, own it.
I have a theory about Milan. Why they're overperforming. It's because
they're not overperforming.
Other teams don't respect. No, I'll tell you why. Yeah, no, it's maybe that, but my theory is the teams don't respect them as much because they believe that they're overperforming, so they don't play against Milan like they normally would play against an Inter or against the Juve, against the traditional big side. They play against the Milan of a few seasons ago because mentally the league still hasn't adjusted to Milan being Milan. And once teams stop trying to have a go at Milan and really parking the bus and playing really ugly, disgusting football like we expect Udinese to try and do against us on the Saturday, I think that's when Pioli comes unstuck. And this is kind of what happened with Pioli and us at some point in time. I reckon this is the situation, because they're not given the respect by sides, and they're given the freedom to play the football that they want. But once teams really start giving Milan the respect that they deserve, because they clearly deserve that respect, we'll then see side like then Pioli will be asked the question that he hasn't been asked so far. But that's just my analysis.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I keep hearing that, but I don't buy it. I don't buy it. They are this good. I agree that teams don't defend deep against them to a certain extent, but whenever they do, Milan have the keys to unlock it, because they play in a very, Pioli's positioning them to play in such an interesting way. They play quick, fast, modern football that is the movement is what intrigues me the most. They have so many young players who are so adaptable, and it's all come together. And to think that the Pioli out was trending when he was appointed, and it's just absolutely.
He only stayed because he was winning so many games. That's like it was all in place for him to. They didn't even want him at first. They wanted Spalletti a year ago. And it was only because Spalletti didn't want to save us some money that they didn't get him. This football's weird like this, isn't it? Things fall into place in ways that you would never quite understand. Weird.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
fans of out of date football news will be pleased to know that they have now won. So the conversation we've just been having is not. It's not been rendered useless by a late comeback or anything.
It doesn't. Look, they were going to win. I mean, as soon as I saw him coming on in midweek against Torino in the Coppa Italia, I knew that he's scoring 2 on Monday. He's scoring 2 on Monday. So I've watched this film for 20 years. It's not a rerun. It's the same. It's like a cycle. It's just he does this all the time, and this is his payback to Inter. That has been eating at his heart for 10 years, and this is his way of saying ha ha in Nelson Simpson style. Right, let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something heavily in the world of football, starting with the positivity, which will be presented by Mr. Positivity, Mr. Mohamed Nassar.
He works a lot, he's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person of these qualities.
So much to choose from. So much. Barella, Bastoni. So many things deserving of this week's very coveted Moratti prize. But I'm going to go with Arturo Vidal. I think the man really, had everyone, including myself, everyone doubting him so much. Everyone was talking about his nerves getting the better of him in the big match. Will he be able to face Juventus without blowing his head off? And really, not only does he score, but like you said, Nima, he put in an extremely decisive performance, reminiscent of the best Vidal, of Juventus, of Bayern, pre-Barcelona for sure. So I think there are certainly better performances on the pitch, but I think in terms of like the players' impact on their own season, I think the Vidal performance could prove to be very, very important for himself and for Inter moving forward to the rest of the season. And it's never easy facing an ex, and for all of that, I think he deserves to be the Moratti of the week.
Hear, hear. Let's move on to something much more comical. This week's frog, which will be presented by Mr. William Beckman.
È clamoroso! Autogol di Ranocchia!
Yes, this is a good one. Incidentally, before I get into the frog of the week, I should just point out that SempreInter will also have their own frog of the week award soon, because I noticed that last night that Juventus had their own Ranocchia in their squad. Filippo Ranocchia, the 19-year-old. So who knows? Maybe a new story of slapstick madness is about to be unleashed on Serie A. But that's a story for the future. But I did have to do a double take when I saw their squad list, and it had Ranocchia among their midfielders. Anyway, this frog award is Juventus related actually. It's Stefano Tacconi this week. He was a Juventus goalkeeper in the 80s. He won 2 Serie A titles with them. And he went out on a limb on Sunday. And, he's probably regretting it now, because he was asked by Sky Sport Italia what was going to happen in the big match at San Siro. And he said in a very kind of dismissive tone, I'm not going to say it's going to be an easy win, but Juventus will win for sure because Antonio Conte is a big head. He keeps insisting on playing a three-man defence, and thank goodness for Juventus, because playing like that, he's going to concede a lot of goals. 48 hours later, 2-0, bye. That's it.
Yeah, he had a bit of a shocker because that interview went really sour, really bad quite after that. And if I'm not mistaken, let's move on to the Moggi of the week, which will be presented by Mr. Jake Smalley.
I'm going to keep the very familiar theme of Mr. Tacconi for the Moggi of the week. I wanted to focus a little bit on his comments towards Walter Zenga. It seemed as if maybe he'd sort of gone a bit nostalgic and gone sort of 20 years in the past with his interview that Will was just sort of alluding to. He took a bit of a dig at Mr. Zenga, which is sort of an age-old feud going back to when they both played in the Serie A. Mr. Tacconi is obviously very, very bitter that Walter Zenga played more times for Italy than him. And his comments regarding Inter look rather stupid now as well. So for me, he's a Moggi of the week. I think the tone of the way he spoke down about Zenga and about the club was very derogatory, and I'm really glad to say they got left with egg on his face. So I'm pretty pleased with that. In some ways, it's a bittersweet way to end Moggi this week. But I just want to ask, Will, is Filippo Ranocchia a Football Manager regen, or is he an actual real player? Because I saw that looking down flash scores, looking at the team, and I couldn't work out if I was actually looking at a real match or a Football Manager spreadsheet. It looked a bit bizarre because I've never seen another Ranocchia before, ever.
I've searched on one of the many search engines that are available to people around the world, and there are pictures of him in a Juventus shirt, and they don't appear to be Regan-based images. And there's also an article in that's sort of touted him as the next star of the future. So it appears to be legit. So hopefully he can slip in the 90th minute in a future match against Inter or something like that.
That was quite the car crash interview he gave. His exact quotes about Zenga, sorry, going back to Tacconi, I laughed so much. He was, I played 9 games for the national team and I didn't lose even one, so that's a good sign in my favor. I played knowing that I wouldn't have much to do. I was pretty calm, unlike Zenga, and I won in the league in Europe while he won very little. You see, that is exactly it, because Walter Zenga was by far the best goalkeeper in the world during those years, and Stefano Tacconi was not good enough, and he couldn't really get over that, and he barely played for the national team.
Still isn't over that.
Yeah, he really isn't, and that's the fact that he played 9 games only is what's annoying him and burning him. But
that must be history. Someone getting 2 awards out of 3 in the same Moggi and Frog double whammy in the same week.
Yeah, no,
that's really, probably never happened before.
No, that didn't. So he keeps writing. So he
hey,
keeps
Zenga's
writing.
Never done that.
No, Zenga's never done that. Congratulations, Mr. Tacconi. Right, that's all we had time for this week. I'd like to thank Marco Palmieri, and I'd like to thank you, Mo.
It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on.
And Mr. Jake Smalley.
Thanks very much for me as always. It's been really good to chat in a really positive way as well this week. So bring on Udinese is what I've got to say.
For sure. And don't forget to check out Jake's weekly editorial, What We Learned from Inter this week. And Mr. William Beckman.
Yeah, let's hope that we don't have to wait another 109 episodes to talk about another win over Juventus. And I would just like to say on the SempreInter front, I know Nima said earlier that he doesn't care about transfer rumours, but of course you must please read SempreInter.com, because we've got so many fabulous transfer rumours for you to read if that is your thing.
No, I mean, I didn't say don't visit the site. I said that I personally, who have worked with this for 9 years now, and this transfer window is. Honestly, it's not going to happen. Not much isn't going to happen, and unless somebody, if Pinamonti leaves, then Eder's coming in. That's what's going to happen. That's the level of the deals being done, and no one has any money. But we will be keeping you updated on all these things 24/7 on SempreInter.com for sure. That's all we had time for this week. I'm your host Nima Tavallaey, wishing you a good week. Enjoy the Derby d'Italia win. Keep basking in it. 3 points, and sempre e solo Forza Inter.